Hi, everyone. It's Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I have with me Dr. Marvin Lozano. He is an entrepreneurial consultant, a bilingual commercial lender, a business and college professor. So he has a long list of accomplishments, and he is going to be presenting today in English and Spanish. I'm asking if anyone would like the presentation to be completely in Spanish. If you can please raise your hand. Or if you'd like it to be completely in English, please raise your hand. And I don't have anyone that has a preference today, Dr. Lozano. So if you would like to start the presentation, we're looking forward to it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Gracias, Leslie. Y vamos a empezar. Let's go ahead and begin. Next. So I'll go ahead, since there is no preference, and do this in English, and I will also do it in Spanish. And as you can see, the presentation slides will be in both bullet form, so that way I'll be able to transition in both languages. Voy a entonces empezar en español y voy también a presentar en inglés para que incluimos a todos. Gracias. Next. Bueno, entonces el título, the title de esta presentación es Acceso a dinero de los bancos, préstamos, SBA para mi pequeña empresa mientras sobrevivo COVID-19. So what I shared was the title, and it is accessing money from banks, those that make alternative loans, also credit unions and SBA for your small business during this pandemic. Very important topic. It's something that all of us need to be aware of, especially if you are in the process of starting a small business or trying to grow your business. So that's the title that in short form is directed at that theme. Next. Bueno, entonces aquí tenemos esto para enseñarles que hay otra instrucción. Pueden tomar otros webinars si prefieren, aquí también. Este es en español, y también la próxima semana presento con la doctora Rivera algo acerca de buena salud durante el COVID. And so what I was sharing there was that there are other workshops offered as webinars by the state SBDC here in New Mexico, and you can look at them at the events page for the website, for the state SBDC website. Please take advantage of them. They're free, no cost to you, and it's indicated so on the particular webinar. And I was also saying there'll be another one in Spanish next week where I team up with Dr. Michaela Rivera, who's a clinical psychologist, and we talk about those basic things that we need to be aware of to protect ourselves with this ongoing pandemic. We know we're transitioning out of it, but even if you look at today's paper, I always get the newspaper in addition to online readings. And the title that I'm looking at is Restrictions Eased for State's 3 Most Populous County. And MOVE allows bars, clubs, to reopen indoor in New Mexico's largest city. So we see that transition is beginning to occur, but we still got a ways to go. Okay, so take advantage of those trainings. Next. Los objetivos del entrenamiento es para ayudarle a ustedes. Queremos que aprovechen de cómo utilizar los recursos que están ahí, que puedan, si están empezando su negocio, o si ya quieren crecer el negocio, ¿ok? Esos son los objetivos. So what I was saying in Spanish is the objectives of this training are to share with you how you can prepare to access. And actually, we talked some about where you can access small business resources, specifically businesses, lines of credit, and some grants that are out there during this pandemic 19. We know that this week there's a new program that's come out specifically directed at restaurants, and it is something you should all be aware of. We'll provide for you an SBDC website later so you can see exactly where to go for application purposes. Next. Okay, in Spanish, resumen la presentación aquí son tres partes. Quiero estar claro que son tres partes. Número uno es acceso al capital. So the first part of this presentation is accessing capital. As a former commercial lender, and I had extensive experience lending to small businesses, large businesses, multinational, exporting, international businesses. And the criteria, the formula for borrowing is the same in the sense that there's four things that we'll talk about that the folks that are in the lending business look at, regardless of whether you're starting, you're a small business, or you're growing, okay? Important for you to know. Número dos, la sostenibilidad del negocio, el crecimiento y la resiliencia. Here we talk about business sustainability, growth, and resilience, okay? And so I'll talk about that because it's not enough to get your money. You've got to be able to know how to grow the business, right? Otherwise, why go through all that trouble, all that pain of growing your business or starting your business if you don't grow it successfully and you have it continue to operate. Número tres, en español, solicitar recursos financieros. Aquí vamos a discutir un poco de cómo pueden solicitar recursos financieros, dónde ir, quiénes son, porque no son todos iguales, no todos son bancos. Sí, hay bancos tradicionales, pero también aparte de eso hay formas de organizaciones que son alternativos para conseguir préstamos y ellos están ahí para ayudarles también. Y aparte de eso está el SBA, ¿no? SBA es un programa muy grande federal que está ahí para asistirle a los negocios pequeños también. Next. Bueno, número uno, ¿no? Lo que dije en presentación, el último concepto que vimos fue que número uno, son tres, pero número uno es conceptos básicos de acceso a capital. So here I'll share with you the basics of accessing capital. Next. Bueno, entonces, como les dije, son cuatro cosas que buscan la gente que hacen préstamos, ¿ok? Que sean bancos tradicionales, que sean alternativos, y hay que existen, por ejemplo, el Dream Spring que existe, the Loan Fund que existe, hay otros también, West hace préstamos pequeños, como SBA también no, pero ¿qué son las cuatro cosas que buscan? Número uno, ¿cómo está su crédito? El crédito es cómo ha pagado sus cuentas. Si usted no paga sus cuentas, entonces le indica al negocio que está revisando su préstamo que pues hay problemas, ¿no? Y entonces ellos van a pensar, ¿por qué le vamos a hacer un crédito a esta persona, a este negocio, si ellos no pagan? ¿Ok? Número dos es flujo de efectivo. Esto es como la sangre de un cuerpo. Es como entra el dinero y entra bastante dinero para pagar los gastos o no. Entonces hay que decidir antes de ir con el banco cómo va a ir usted preparado o no a discutir flujo de efectivo. ¿Ok? Yo les voy a ayudar un poco en esta presentación cómo prepararse. Número tres, garantía. ¿Qué ofrece usted? Es como todo. Si yo quiero algo, hay que decir, bueno, esto te ofrezco a ti como de garantía. La gente que hace préstamos está pensando de eso también. Aunque ahorita lo que sabemos es por la el pandemic que existe, hay forma de ayuda en forma de, le dicen en inglés, grants, dinero que está ofreciendo el gobierno y no se tiene que pagar si usted sigue operando bien. Pero es posible que van a convertir ese grant a un préstamo. Entonces, aquí vamos con los pagos otra vez, ¿ok? Entonces, ¿qué es la garantía? Número 4, condiciones. ¿Cómo anda ahorita la cosa de las condiciones en el mercado? Sabemos que hay COVID-19 todavía no se va, pero las condiciones se están poniendo mejor. So what I was saying in Spanish is those 4 bullets that are so critical for us as small business owners, for you as a small business owner, or as a startup. Remember, this is directed at a startup, if you're thinking of starting your business, or if you're already in business, growing your business, okay? So keep this in mind. I'm always amazed at how this is not shared in colleges or universities with the students. So I always find it an advantage when I go in and I say, listen, I'm talking to you as a former commercial lender within the bank who was trained to make business loans. And these are the 4 things we were all trained to do. So that regardless of what type of loan is, if it's a small business loan, okay, these are the 4 things that the lender's thinking of as you go in and you say, hey, I need some money. This is what I want it for. And they won't necessarily share this with you, but this is what they're thinking and they're underwriting and they're looking at whether they want to approve this loan or not, okay? So number 1 is credit. What kind of credit does the applicant have? So they will run a credit score, let's say, get a credit score on you personally. And if it's already an existing business, they will check out what kind of credit you have with your vendors, okay? Very important, because the lender wants to know, have you paid your obligations in the past as you agreed to pay them, okay? Because of course, if you haven't, then it puts a little red flag around your application, and they say, well, gee, how do I know I'm gonna get paid back? Now, this doesn't mean if you have dings in your credit, you won't get what you want, but be prepared to explain why you got those dings. Was there a medical problem in the family? You know, did someone get sick? What is it? They're forgiving people, but you need to not pull any surprises here, okay? Be very clear. Number two is cash flow, okay? Every lender is taught to think, does the applicant know how they're gonna pay this loan back? Okay, and that to them is cash flow. So you can help yourself a lot, and I'll talk to this a little bit later in the presentation by providing a miniature cash flow that everyone can prepare and be better prepared going into the bank, okay? Number 3 is collateral. As I said in Spanish, think of it as you want something from the lender. You want something, maybe in today's pandemic, we know, as I was saying earlier, that there are grants that are also made available, but be aware that some of those grants convert to loans. And if they convert to loans, you still need to be able to pay it. And they will ask you for collateral in some of those loans. So be aware, what do you have to offer? You know, do you have a car? Do you have equity in your house? I always remember this story when I was new to lending many years ago. I worked very hard in putting together an SBA guaranteed loan for a bank. I was doing a lot of consulting with a group of national small business advisors. And I waited till I presented the loan to the SBA, okay, and to say, I don't think this applicant wants to put up their house as collateral. And the response to me from SBA was, well, then why would we want to enter into an agreement to guarantee their loan if they default? Again, the thinking is, you know, what is the applicant willing to put up to say, you know, I'm going to do everything I can to make this a reality, to make this business successful. So be thinking collateral. What are you offering? And 4 is conditions, which is a, you know, very obvious point to many startups and existing business right now. The conditions are we're operating under what? A very, very dangerous pandemic, you know, COVID-19. So what are you going to do to survive given those added burdens of COVID-19? As I said earlier, in today's Albuquerque Journal, it says, or it cites, it quotes folks from the SBA, and the journalists are saying that we're beginning to open up. Okay, and we are beginning to open up, especially those bars and clubs and restaurants, and there is help out there, but be prepared to explain how you are going to overcome the challenges there. Okay, next. Okay, aquí es algo muy importante. I'll do this in Spanish and then in English, all right? So here we go. En español es estimación antes de iniciar. Es un ejercicio que muchos negocios, ya cuando necesitan dinero, están muy claros. Necesito una cantidad, unos 15, 25, 40, 50, 100 mil. Sí, pero no se preparan para explicar cómo van a usar el dinero. Entonces, piensen este ejercicio de esta forma. Saquen una pluma y un pedazo de papel y pongan, ¿qué es el dinero disponible que tienen ustedes a la mano? ¿Qué es lo que tienen? So here what I'm saying is this is a pre-startup estimate every small startup or existing business can do. Because what you want to do, regardless of whether you're saying to yourself, hey, there's grants out there, or, I can't get a grant, but I can get a small business at a preferred interest rate, which is very, very low in this COVID pandemic time. You can best help yourself by preparing on what I was saying is just a simple piece of paper, a list of these 4 bullets and addressing them for you personally. Number 1 is what's the cash you have on hand? It's always best to say, I'm going to provide this kind of cash, but I need more cash rather than say I don't have any. So before you start, what's the cash you have on hand? Número 2 es presta. Número 2. Entonces, no número, pero especificando punto 2, ¿no? Punto 2. ¿Qué es? Si ya tiene usted un préstamo, es presta aquí, pero préstamo, hay que poner la cantidad que ya tienes. O si no es préstamo, si es dinero que consiguieron porque hay un programa especial ahorita, vamos a decir PPP dinero, o vamos a decir dinero que les ofrecieron, como esta semana empezó la ayuda a los restaurantes en forma de grant, ¿no? Entonces, hay que poner los fondos aquí, porque hay para enseñar cómo vas a sobrevivir el COVID-19, ¿ok? Bullet 3, line of credit. En español es línea de crédito, ¿ok? Line of credit would be another form or another resource. Okay, and I love to talk about this. Yesterday, or maybe it was several days ago, I sat down with a small business as the consultant on that particular loan and explained to them, this is made to you as a line of credit rather than as a loan, because as a line of credit, while you are out shopping for inventory and out shopping for equipment, you can take draws on this line of credit and only pay interest on the line of credit portion that you took out. I said, then you can, send me an email and I will then get involved, okay, and advocate for you and say to the alternative lender in this case, this is the amount of money you specifically have asked for under your line of credit, okay? And by the way, this was a very attractive line of credit at an interest rate, a COVID rate of 3.75%, which is very, very low in good economic times. So take advantage of it, okay? Línea de crédito es para tener un recurso donde no tienen que pagar inmediatamente en total el préstamo, okay? En un préstamo, el punto 2, te da el grupo, el banco, el alternativo negocio, el SBA, te lo dan todo, ¿no? Y tienes que empezar a pagar los intereses inmediatamente, ¿ok? Principal e intereses cada mes. Línea de crédito opera diferente. Entonces, hay que pensar qué necesitas. Pero si tienes línea de crédito, ya te lo aprobaron, ¿ok? Hay que ponerlo aquí. Es parte de lo que tienes antes de abrir o antes de iniciar el proyecto nuevo. Es lo que tienes ahorita para empezar o lo que tienes disponible. Point 4 is other cash. Other cash may be that you have a relative who you have a wonderful rapport with, right? And they say, you know what, don't get a lender, don't get a grant, I'll offer you some money. I worked with a diesel business. They repaired diesel trucks, diesel vehicles of any kind, in fact. But what the gentleman did to start his business is he went to his brothers and he said, can you invest in me? You know, take some of the money that you have in the bank and invest it in me. We'll draw up, right, a short contract and I will pay you a certain amount of interest rate. So it benefits both parties. It benefits him because he gets the money from family at a preferred rate, and it benefits who? It benefits the lender, the brother, because he's helping family, but he's also getting a return on his investment. So other cash, okay? Point 4, under pre-startup. Entonces aquí otro dinero, punto 4, es qué van a hacer ustedes para obtener dinero aparte de presta y línea de crédito. Es posible que tienes un hermano, hermana, tía, tío, padre que te dice, yo tengo dinero, yo te lo ofrezco, ¿ok? Pero págame poquito de interés y lo negociamos nosotros entre familia y firmamos un documento que dice que yo te voy a pagar los intereses, ¿no? O que tú me vas a pagar intereses si es tu negocio, ¿no? Pero aquí pones esa forma de otro dinero. Y aquí en total, here in total, okay, aquí en total pones el total de estimación antes de iniciar. So here you would put the pre-startup estimate. Part of this idea is this, think of it this way. You are showing someone who's investing in you, doesn't matter who is providing help to you, that you have made an effort to put some of your own resources, apart from what we call sweat equity, right? Sweat equity, you know, I did this research, I've done all this other work. Here, what we're saying is, what are some of the tangible resources that are available for you as you go forward in your new business, startup, okay? Or if it's what? A new project, a new market, you still need to think, what do I have available before I get going on this, okay? Next. Bueno, igual como pusieron, I'll do this in Spanish than in English, okay? Igual como pusieron los recursos que tienen disponible antes de empezar, okay? Aquí vamos a poner efectivo, pagar o que ya pagaste. ¿Qué fueron los fondos que ya salieron de tu cuenta para este negocio que quieres empezar o el proyecto que quieres empezar? Y aquí pones punto número 1, okay? 2, 3, 4, 5, son 4 puntos que puse aquí, okay? Por ejemplo, son ejemplos nada más, okay? So what I was sharing here is that just as in the previous slide, we want to put forth on, and it can be as simple as, you know, type blank piece of paper, notebook paper, whatever you have available. This day and age, it might be a Word document, right? So we prepare the Word document and we say cash paid out. Okay, and then you put down, I'm going to talk about these 4 different bullets, what you've already invested in the business, okay? Apart from what we call sweat equity, these folks that are out there lending want to see what effort you have made, okay? Other than your, what we call sweat equity, which is, hey, you know, I ran around and I did research. I went out to the libraries. I talked to existing small businesses. That's all in your favor. But here we want to see some tangible the resources that you paid out. Entonces, número 1 son compras de mercancía. Si ya compraste mercancía, aquí pones la cantidad. So this bullet is purchases. If you've already bought merchandise you'll be using in the startup or in this new what? In this new branching out activity, put down the dollar value. Okay, you've paid this out already. Okay. Número dos, compra de capital. Hay que ser específico aquí. ¿Qué es lo que compraste? Si es posible que ya vas a utilizar un auto, entonces lo pones aquí. So bullet 2 here is directed at what capital purchases you've already made. For example, if you have, let me use an example here. I worked with a business in New Mexico where they already have been in business and made a name for themselves, and now they're looking to expand into a different type of work. But because they've already been in business, they have already some vehicles that they can use and some equipment that they can use on this new branching out activity. Here on bullet 2, they put the value of the capital they've already got, right? So they're saying, look, I've got this already. This is going to help me move towards that idea of being successful during the pandemic time and afterwards. Okay. Aquí compra de capitales, ¿qué ya tienes? ¿Qué tienes disponible? Lo pones aquí en forma de capital. Okay. Número 3, suministros de limpieza. De lo que estamos hablando aquí es si ya invertiste en, vamos a decir, suministros de limpieza y los tienes disponibles, si los estás vendiendo o si los vas a tener para tu negocio, para los empleados. Entonces, ¿qué es la cantidad que gastaste? Aquí lo pones. Cleaning supplies here then would indicate for you as a startup, have you invested for purposes of protecting yourself, of protecting clients, of protecting your employees? If so, put down the dollar amount of those cleaning supplies, okay? In fact, you may even be selling them, who knows? But here you put what you've invested in that area, okay? Number 4, or item 4 here, bullet 4 better said, I guess, would be, in Spanish, renta. La renta es que estás pagando para localizar tu negocio y dónde estás. Muchas veces cuando estaba enseñando en clases cada año después en el colegio CNM, yo tenía el clase de emprendedores y yo está encargado de esa clase. Y muchas veces los estudiantes me decían, pero no quiero rentar, quiero comprar. Y yo les decía, en cambio, ¿y cómo vas a comprar si todavía no tienes negocio? Eso viene después. Primero piensa de rentar y cuando tienes éxito, entonces empiezas a ¿qué? A pagar, comprar un edificio. So what I was saying in Spanish is here, this is rent, and it may seem like a very basic idea, and it is, but you'd be surprised how many people come to me. They came to me when I was formerly a commercial lender within the traditional bank system, and then in the alternative lending area, and now as a consultant. And they say to me, you know what I want to do? I want to buy a building. And I say, but you're a startup. And they say, yeah, but I want to buy a building. And so my conversation with them, based on all the experience that I've been fortunate to have, is the way that lenders look at this is they want to see if you made a prudent decision and rented prior to looking to buy. Because what you don't want to do is weigh yourself down with debt or money you have to pay down for a building. We know buildings are not cheap, right? Real estate is not cheap. After you've proven yourself, after you've already proven you can make money and pay all the other expenses, including rent, show on paper financial statements that show you have the cash flow to now buy. So for now, rent, what have you paid out? Maybe you have first and last month's rent, maybe you have deposits. The 4th bullet, el punto 4, es teléfono. Aquí es si ya depositaste dinero o es posible que entraste a un contrato para celulares para ti, los empleados, o en qué gastaste aquí. So what I was saying is here under telephone, if you entered in a contract, let's say as an example, a contract to have several cell phones, they're not cheap, right? And contracts are expensive, What have you paid? You want to put this down. So what you have is these 5, and I've used many of these as examples. You may have other things you've paid out on that go toward the business. But what you want to have is, as in the previous slide indicates, what are your resources? And here, what is it that you have actually paid out as what? As you go forward with starting the business. Don't show up. I recommend anyway that you shouldn't show up to anyone that's in the money game and lending money or providing grants and not be prepared. We can all do this. Put down what you have as resources, what you've already invested, okay? So this will help you tremendously, and it helps the lender understand where you're coming from, okay? Next. Okay, en español primero, in Spanish first, and then in English. Flujo de efectivo, aquí lo hice yo por 6 meses, ¿ok? 6 meses. Le puse yo enero, febrero, marzo, abril, mayo y junio. Ustedes le pueden cambiar los meses. Si quieren, no, porque me dicen, no, ya pasó enero. Bueno, pues pongan junio, si van a empezar en junio o en julio. Nomás ese ejemplo, ¿ok? Entonces, lo que ponen aquí, ya cuando empiezan su primer mes, vamos a decir que van a empezar su negocio, ¿ok? Esto lo quieren preparar y proyectar antes de ir a pedir y poner una solicitud para préstamo, ¿ok? Aunque sea un préstamo con intereses favorables, ahorita como muchos de los que hacen préstamos tienen algo por COVID-19, le dicen el interés, COVID-19 interest rate, interés. Es 3.75, muy, muy bajo, ¿ok? Pero aquí hay que poner, antes de empezar, ¿qué es lo que tienes en caja? ¿Qué es lo que tienes disponible? So what I was saying was, and then I'll continue in Spanish, but I want to clarify in English. This is a cash flow for 6 months because, well, I thought 6 months was sufficient to give you an example of what you want to do. You may want to do it for 12 months, okay? The lenders may want to see it for 12 months. But once you get started for 6 months, you can see it's pretty standard across the way. You just add months, okay? I use January. That doesn't mean you use January. You use the month that applies to you when you start this cash flow projection. If you're starting a business in, let's say, June, then start this in June, and then go June, July, August, September, and so forth, okay? But the idea is to put these different items on this cash flow so that you can show those folks in the lending or in the granting of money business that you have thought this through, okay? That there's some analysis here. You aren't just going and saying, as we used to say in the bank, when somebody would show up and they'd say, how much can you lend me? You know, that's the biggest mistake any borrower would make, you know, and say, how much can you lend me? You know, because the typical response from the banker is going to be, well, how much do you need? And then show me. So why not show before you get to that point? And it puts you one step ahead of the other small business that wants money also, right? So cash on hand. Okay, I'm going back to Spanish here under recibos efectivo, and then I'll do it in English. Okay, so recibos de efectivo va a ser aquí los 4 puntos, okay? Va a ser ¿qué espero recibir yo? Okay. Recibos de efectivo. Ventas de efectivo son las ventas que espero recibir en el futuro, okay, pero que sean en efectivo. Okay. El punto 2 son colecciones de cuenta por cobrar. Aquí la idea es, ¿qué van a colectar ustedes en su negocio? Y claramente tienes que tener un sistema donde vas a vender con crédito. Cuando le haces decir a tus clientes, bueno, págame en 30, 60, 90 días, ¿no? Pero entonces aquí pones colecciones, lo que esperas recibir en los meses del futuro. Punto 3, préstamo, línea de crédito. Si vas a tener ayuda en forma de préstamo, línea de crédito, ¿cómo lo vas a aplicar? Y también adicionalmente, les voy a decir que es importante poner el interés, ¿ok? La cantidad que vas a recibir y el interés si vas a pagar. Si no hay interés, no hay problema ahorita. pero ese tipo de ayuda va abajo de otro efectivo. ¿Ok? Si esperas recibir ayuda en forma, por ejemplo, ahorita, no, lo que empezó el lunes que era muy importante fue ayuda a los restaurantes, ¿ok? Que necesitan mucha ayuda porque ya llevan un año cerrados, ¿ok? Aunque en el periódico de día de hoy dicen que ya van a empezar a aceptar más clientes, vamos abriendo las puertas, ¿no? Pero si recibe, por ejemplo, ayuda de los préstamos o de los grants que están disponibles para los restaurantes en el SBA, ¿ok? Entonces aquí pone la cantidad que esperas recibir y cómo la vas a utilizar cada mes, ¿ok? Okay, so what I was saying in Spanish was here, the 4 bullets basically are cash sales, collection of receivables, loan or line of credit, and other cash. And so what you're doing here is in the cash on hand, you are putting the cash that you have the month that you start the business, the new project, and go forward, or the new project and go forward if you're an existing business, okay? And then what follows is what are the sources of income that are going to be coming in? You're projecting what? Cash sales. Most small businesses will have some type of cash sales. So you'll project those out for the months that you choose. You're also going to project out receivables if you're going to sell on credit. Okay, I worked with a lot of businesses when I was in the banking area where they said, you know, I'm selling my product, but they pay me in 45 days. If that's the case, then 45 days takes you, in the example I have here, into February. Okay, if you collect in 45 days, that is, if you collect in 90 days, you're out to March. So you want to show this because this affects cash flowing into your business if you sell on credit. Okay, loan or line of credit, as I said in the previous example, you can get usually a loan which comes to you in one big lump sum, but you pay principal and interest probably starting the next month. Or you do a line of credit. Now, the example I use there for a lot of folks is think of a credit card where you have this credit approved amount and you just draw on it as you need it, okay? And so here you want to put down when that money's coming into you. You know, when is it going to come in, okay? Other cash would be other money that comes into you. As we talked about earlier, which might be that maybe that relative's help giving you some money on a monthly basis. That's where you put this and you total it. That's cash receipts. Total, recibos de efectivo totales. Next.
Dr. Lozano, we had a question coming in.
Okay.
And I want to go ahead and read it to you just
Sure.
in case, because I think it's along what you've got. So Sarah asked, would capital include something like social media, insights, followings, brand, website, or are they only tangible things like cars, buildings, and the space?
That's an excellent question. Do I answer it in English or Spanish? Would be the first question, I guess, on my part. Well, I'll do it in both. Maybe
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. So first I'll do it in English, then I'll do it in Spanish. So the question is in the pre-startup. I guess that's the prior slide. The prior 2 slides. It would have been no. I guess it'd be the next slide here. There you go. Okay. Under cash paid out. Capital purchases, I think, would in this case, the traditional example is whether the person that's put this outline together has hard assets. So I'm talking under hard assets is, did you, for example, I'm working with folks that are in the transportation business too. And they go out and they look for these tractors that pull these big trailers, right? And these tractors are usually on a used basis. They're between $30,000 and $50,000. And they'll say, that's what I want. And in some cases, they've already spent to get it because they had to pay for it immediately, right? And so that's an example of a hard asset, a capital purchase. What you're asking, here's what I would suggest. Put another line down and say other capital, okay? Other capital, and this is where you can put in those expenses that you've already spent on, social media, I think was one that I heard. Yes, that's a very wonderful example because you may be paying for that to get that website and the right markets out. So put down what you've invested. The idea is that you paid out money, you want to put it in here. Okay, in Espanol, I'm going to say this in Spanish now, okay, for the benefit if someone prefers it in Spanish. Aquí, compra de capital, el ejemplo que usé es, si usted ya tiene, por ejemplo, un auto o tiene equipo que utilice en su negocio, vamos a decir que va a reparar autos y tiene equipo especial, y porque era mecánico, vamos a decir, y pues aquí pone esos gastos que ya ha pagado. Pero también como la pregunta es, pero ¿y si ya gasté en otras formas para empezar mi negocio, social media, por ejemplo? Lo que recomiendo yo es prepare otra línea. Otra línea aquí. No tiene que ser compras mercancía, compra capital, suministros de limpieza, renta, teléfono, solamente. Estos son ejemplos. Póngale otro capital y aquí específicamente pone cómo gastó y qué es lo que ya invirtió en su negocio. Okay. Okay, I think I covered it, Leslie, in both.
Thank you. Let me move the slides and see if, right here.
I believe so, because the last one was, well, maybe no, maybe here we have, yes, okay, the next one then would be, okay, that's fine. Yes, thank you. Okay, so in following with what we've been doing, I'll go ahead and do the slide bullet first in Spanish, then in English. So aquí es no ames lo que eres, sino lo que puedes llegar a ser, del famoso Miguel de Cervantes, ¿no? Él es el código de esto. Es muy importante. Aquí la idea es que es tu sueño. ¿Para dónde le estás tirando? Y si quedas enfocado en eso, yo es donde quiero llegar, entonces sigues luchando para llegar allí. Okay? Here what I was saying in Spanish, and it applies equally in English, okay, is the expression is, or the quote is, do not love what you are, but what you can become. I used Miguel de Cervantes, his example, but it's paraphrased in other ways from other very successful entrepreneurs, in fact, who, for example, I often cite a book called The Ice House that you can find online for $5, $6. It's a wonderful book for startups or growing a small business. But they emphasize the idea of, said in a different way, is what is your passion? So in other words, as a small business person, think ahead. Think of what you would like to become. What's your vision? Because then what we begin to do is do the things we don't necessarily like to do right now, knowing that there is a reward in the future, right? Okay, so what can you become? Okay, next slide. En español primero y luego en inglés, ok. Aquí la idea empezamos, el número 2 es la tema mayor, la sostenibilidad del negocio, es mayor tema, ok. Porque lo que queremos decir es que ya empezando tu negocio, conseguiste dinero o fondos o sigues luchando para conseguir lo que necesitas. Pero ¿cómo vas a sostenibilidad el negocio para que siga creciendo? Okay, y son 5 puntos aquí. Okay, and so what I was saying is this is the second major theme of this webinar, and that's your business sustainability. Because what I'm advocating, based on my experience as a lender and working with traditional banks, alternative lenders, and many, many SBA guarantees, what's being looked at is how are you going to sustain your business? Okay, it's not enough to say, I'm starting here. And by the way, this is where the cash flow helps, because you're already projecting out in that previous slide where we talked about 6 months projecting out your cash flow. You're thinking, this is the way I'm going to sustain. I'm going to be able to pay my expenses because I've thought through what my sales are going to be and how I cover the expenses. Okay. Okay, so moving on, the 5 bullets here is what I'll talk about briefly. Número 1, no necesito una idea completa nueva para empezar un negocio. Ustedes que andan empezando negocios, no necesitan una idea completa nueva. Yo trabajo con muchos negocios que ya existen, por ejemplo, un restaurante. Vamos a decir alguien que trabaja en cuidar de niños. ¿Ok? Hay mucha necesidad, no tienes que tener una idea nueva. Here, what I was saying is you don't need a whole new idea to start a business. There are many good ideas out there. I work with many folks, and the ones that come to mind that, you know, that meet the market need that's out there are small. For example, childcare businesses, development businesses, tremendous need out there. Okay, and so maybe this is an idea, you tweak it to meet the skills you have and where you want to go. Maybe it's a restaurant. You know, restaurants will continue to be here. They're struggling right now, but they will continue to just find your niche in the marketplace. Okay, I'm working with different businesses that have approached us. A sushi business, for example. I don't know yet what's going to happen, but there are the businesses like that out there. Okay. No necesita mucho dinero para empezar un negocio. Aquí la idea es, acuérdense, si tienen la experiencia, ya han trabajado en ese tipo de negocio, ¿y qué es su idea? Para el futuro. No es, no tengo dinero. Muchas veces me dice la gente, no tengo dinero. Pero ¿qué es tu idea? Okay. So here the second thing is, you don't need a lot of money to start a business. And again, I think it's a matter of being clear what the business is you're starting. Why are you starting this business? Is there a need out there? Explain to me how you're going to make this work. Okay, and it may be that you know that you have the experience. Then you want to share that when you go to someone who is in the business of lending money or providing grants. You know, what makes you special? What makes your business special? Okay, why is your hamburger different? That's a little exaggeration, no, but because I use that because I used to use it in class all the time. There are a ton of businesses selling hamburgers, but you know, they do it a little differently. So what's your niche? Número 3, use lo que sabe de su experiencia, entrenamiento. Número 4, no necesito un plan de negocios de 20 páginas. Y número 5, no necesito comprar o rentar un edificio para empezar negocio. I'm going to speed it up a little bit because I don't want us to get caught without talking about some of these places you can go for your loans. So here, yeah, what I'm saying is use what you already know from your experience. You don't need a 20-page business plan. You do not need to buy or rent a building. Keep all these things in mind, okay? And again, it's a matter of being on focus. Next. El crecimiento or the growth, just 3 points here, okay? En español primero, evaluar si está bien preparado para ser un emprendedor. Número 2, reflexionar sobre sus actitudes al dinero y prosperidad y familiarse con la mentalidad empresarial. Aquí la cosa es, ok, prepárese para ser emprendedor, es algo difícil. Y entonces hay que decir, bueno, no me voy a tener, como decimos en español, las ganas, ¿no? Voy a seguir creciendo mi negocio. ¿Y qué es la mentalidad que tengo? Here what I was saying is for growth, assess whether you're prepared to be an entrepreneur. This is hard business. You work, you sometimes you miss holidays, you miss birthdays, you know, but you do what you have to. So what are your attitudes to money and prosperities? And get familiar with the mindset. Next. Resiliencia, aquí nomás es para decir es que nuestra más grande debilidad es darnos por vencidos. La manera más segura de triunfar es siempre intentar una vez más. Okay, so what I'm saying here is our greatest weakness is giving up. Surest way to succeed is always to try one more time. And hey, there's many great people that have said this. I just cite Thomas Edison here, okay? If he hadn't continued working toward his goal, we wouldn't even know who he is today, okay? So don't give up, okay? Resilience is very important. Next. Ok, número 3. Aquí esto es muy importante. Serán 2 temas, acuérdense. Número 3. So here I'm saying the third bullet is the one that's very important. We don't want to leave without talking about this one. And that's first in Spanish, then in English. ¿Qué son las formas donde conseguir crédito o grants, lo que sea, la ayuda que necesita, la sangre del negocio, el dinero? Bancos, cooperativas de crédito, prestamistas, alternativos, y el SBA. So what I'm saying is the forms of money that are well respected that are out there, okay? And I use these specifically because these are places you can go that are prepared to provide you with the kind of lending, low interest loans right now because of COVID, as well as the grant programs that are out there to help you succeed, okay? And they are banks, credit unions, alternative lenders, and SBA. Next. Bueno, con bancos y algunas uniones de crédito en Nuevo México, existe que el programa de protección de cheques de pago, PPP es el programa. Todavía existe. Es posible que ya utilizaste este programa, pero es posible que en el segundo, como le dicen en inglés, round, hay dinero disponible para ti. Entonces, hay que prepararte como expliqué en este webinar, ¿ok? Ve preparado y explica lo que necesitas, ¿ok? Dinero, ellos te pueden ayudar. Y también te puede ayudar el sistema de oficinas de SBDC que están aquí en Nuevo México. Existen en todo el estado. Hay nada más de buscarlos a ver en Google, a ver dónde está la oficina localizada cerca de ti en un colegio. Ellos te ayudan con el PPP program, ¿ok? Algo muy importante, lo empezaron para que los negocios que ya estaban operando no dejaran ir los empleados, ¿ok? Y para eso existe, porque todavía seguimos en el COVID, ¿ok? Next.
We have another question that's come
Sure.
in, and he's looking for some clarification about PPP.
Okay.
Is it available to startups?
Well, that's an excellent question. And here's the issue is that, how are you defining startup? Startup is defined in a lot of different ways. If he has not had any sales yet and hasn't had any employees, it's going to be hard for that individual to make a case that he's laying off people. Usually the way you see this program in place is because the business is operating and now they face the prospect of laying off people. But for clarification, it's available in English and in Spanish on the SBA website. So, and also, as I said earlier, with the SBDC offices, they're perfectly able to answer that question if there is an exception. En español, I'll do it briefly in Spanish too. En español es que normalmente este programa existe para negocios que ya están operando. Entonces, si vas a empezar y todavía no tienes empleados, pues es difícil decir que préstame o ayúdame con este programa, ¿ok? Entonces, lo que les recomiendo es, le vamos a enseñar dónde pueden ir al website del SBA y ahí está donde pueden leer en español los detalles del programa. O hablen también con el SBDC y ellos están los consultores ahí para asistirles. Okay. I did it in both languages. I hope that was helpful. Next. Okay. Aparte de bancos, les quiero decir que, mire, quiero que piensen también, I'll do this in Spanish and then in English. Prestamistas alternativos son grupos, por ejemplo, Green Spring, el Loan Fund, West, son prestamistas alternativos. Ellos también pueden hacer préstamos y muchas veces ayudan a negocios que están empezando, pero no pueden hacer cantidades grandes, ¿no? Pero para ahí están. Los programas que ofrecen ellos son préstamos o líneas de crédito de cover, va muy bajo interés, 3.75%. Y es un programa que tienen y hay otros. So what I was saying here in Spanish is don't forget the alternative lenders, DreamSpring, the Loan Fund, West. These are legitimate business nonprofits, actually, is what they are, that have all these programs available to have small business, and sometimes have more flexibility than their traditional lenders. Remember, we talked about what? Credit. This is the way they assess credit, okay? Cash flow, collateral, and conditions. So the alternative lenders can be a little bit more flexible with those areas, okay? And so they're looking to put that money out there too. Next. Okay, in Spanish first. Bueno, aquí les quiero enseñar, and I'll say it in English too, because Leslie is going to go to the website, right, Leslie? So I'll say, let me say, yeah. Bueno, lo que están viendo aquí son en español opciones de asistir por COVID-19. Esto también está en inglés. This is also in English, by the way. If you go to the website, it's the sba.gov. Again, I'll say it. www.sba.gov. Okay, it's sba.gov if you Google it. It's in English and it's in Spanish. Esto está en español y en inglés, o en inglés y español. Y lo que pueden ver es, aquí tienen los detalles para los programas muy importante. Can you go down a little bit, Leslie? Si bajan poquito. There you go, keep going down. Exactly, thank you. Bueno, lo que ven aquí en español son programas de protección de pago. Viene siendo ¿qué? PPP. Aquí en inglés o en español pueden leer más de cómo trabaja este programa. Para la gente que no necesita o no pueden calificar, por ejemplo, la pregunta que tuvimos fue alguien que estaba interesado de PPP. So what I was saying in Spanish is, here's some more, in fact, very detailed information on the PPP program that the SBA shares with you. It's in English and it's in Spanish. We just happen to be showing the Spanish in Spanish here, what it is. But here you can get a lot of good detail on the PPP program. Okay, it's so much that we couldn't even get close to explaining it in this webinar. But go in there and read it, okay? English or Spanish, okay? But segundo programa, I also wanted to share the EIDL. You see it, it's the second logo, EIDL for COVID. In Espanol, EIDL por COVID. This is an important program that exists because it's considered a disaster loan program that the government has. And we are currently in that type of an environment. So here you're looking though at loans that maybe you need. An earlier question came in about capital purchases, right? When we were talking about what's considered under capital, is it hard assets or soft assets? And so here it might be you need a loan for either of those. Okay, but this would be a low interest loan for operating capital in English. In Spanish, it's operando capital líquido para operar. Este es muy importante también. Dice leer más. It says read more. So you can go in there, read in English or Spanish about this program, which is a disaster loan program for folks that are looking for what we call operating capital. And that may be the program the gentleman or the lady earlier was asking about. If I've invested in social media, maybe you haven't yet and you need money for that kind of need, this is where you go. Can we see this one? The third one is Guía de Recursos, COVID. What that is in English, in Español es otros recursos. In English, it's other resources that are there. And I think if on your own, because we're running out of time, I suggest you check that site out too. If you have a restaurant or interest in a restaurant, that new program that came out Monday of this week is discussed there in English or in Spanish, okay? How that program works and how it may convert from grant to a loan. But it's real important. It also explains how you apply for it. Okay, so just one last plug I want to make for the SBDCs, and that's that go visit them. They're very helpful to you. Those advisors are there for a reason, okay? En español, vayan con la gente, los ayudantes, los consejeros del SBDC en el estado que les ayude. Gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lozano. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to remind everyone to visit nmsbdc.org. We can hook you up with a local center. We have them all over the state. We have a thank you once again to you, Dr. Lozano.
Thank
But
you.
anyway, we want great info. It's not so daunting anymore. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
We want to remind everyone to get the no-cost confidential counseling in your local area. It is available for you. We want everyone to have a great day, and we will see you at the next webinar. All right, I am going to stop recording.